Hi everyone, and welcome back to my top 500 games, and we are continuing on right now from number 288, and this is a game that I don't really have much to say about it. This game is Sega Rally. Now, I'm specifically talking about the PSP version here because that's the version that I had. I also had the Xbox 360 version, but what I seem to remember about that was that I just couldn't control the car with any sort of traction at all. You would just turn slightly a little bit to the left and then it would whiz out of control. Then you turn slightly a little bit to the right and the same thing would happen again in the opposite direction. But the game that I played the most of, or rather the version I played the most of, was the version that was on the PSP, which seemed to be pretty much the same type thing as the 360 version, apart from I could control it. That was the big bonus to that, I suppose, even though it's not really a bonus. But this game is kind of like a sort of sequel, spiritual successor, or sort of a spin-off of the V-Rally game that I mentioned earlier, even though I do know that Sega Rally was an actual game from ages ago. That's the game where it goes, game over, yeah! That one. Yeah, that's not the version that I've played, so I'm imagining that V-Rally is a spin-off of this game or something, I imagine. But yeah, I used to play this on the PSP, and it's a racing game. But what's interesting really, and I suppose this is kind of the opposite of interesting actually, is that I really don't have much to say about it. I just played this on my PSP, I played it in my nana's house, I remember specifically sitting in the kitchen and playing on it. And I just remember having a good old time doing races on the PSP. That's the main point of this. So really, I don't have much to say about this game, so I am just going to swiftly move on. Number 287 is a very strange game, and I'll just preface this by saying that if any of you have played this, I'll be very surprised, unless, I suppose, if you went to a secondary school in the UK around the early 2000s, I would say there's a chance that you've played this game. Otherwise, I can't imagine any of you ever played this game, because this is quite an anomaly. This is a game called Prime Solver, and if any of you did go to school in the UK during those times, I imagine some of you are going, oh yes, I remember that, and the rest of you are going, what? What's this? Basically, it was a piece of software that came on a particular brand of computer. It was the Acorn computers that we had in the school, and the best way I can describe this game is that it's sort of like a Rube Goldberg machine type thing. You have a series of levels of which are puzzles that you have to solve, and the aim of each level varies depending on what the level actually is. So it might be you have to get this ball to drop into this jar, so you have to place a ramp in this area so that it will bounce off into the right angles and then it will bounce off walls or something like that. Or you might have it where you have to burst a balloon, so you'll have this laser device and you have to set up mirrors so that the laser can be guided towards the balloon so it can burst it. The main level that I remember was you had to get this frog to land in this water, and so you had to connect this machine up using pipes. I don't remember exactly the significance of those pipes, but I just remember that the frog kind of fell onto a diving board and then landed into the water. But also, there was a sort of level editor that came with this as well, but it wasn't really a level editor because it wasn't that you could set up your own individual puzzles. All you really had were these different blocks and different pieces that you could put together that could make your own Rube Goldberg machine. So you have like a ball that hits a switch, and the switch will set off the laser beam, which will burst the balloon, which will allow for this other thing to fall and will turn on this conveyor belt, that type of thing. I did actually find out that there was a strict level editor later on, but I wasn't really able to utilize it because I tried putting the things together, but I think there was a problem with saving the level or something like that. I don't really remember. I just remember that I didn't really have much opportunity to work with that. But this is a strange individual game here that, like I said, if some of you remember those from school like I did, then this would probably trigger some nostalgia for you. Everyone else, you've probably never heard of this. Number 286 is Xmas Lemmings. Not Christmas Lemmings, Xmas Lemmings, specifically called Xmas Lemmings. This game I got one Christmas of, I believe it would have been 1993 because it was just after the Christmas where I got my Amiga originally, which I think was 1992. And I also spoke about this Christmas when I got Chrome on the Amiga. That is where I told my parents that there are 5-letter passwords and they had to guess by the actions that I did. I've told that story. But this is Lemmings. I've actually already talked about Lemmings because one of the previous entries was the PS3 version. But the way that it works is that you have the Lemmings, they come from the opening, the start of the level, and they will just walk forward and you have to put things in the level, so you could like build bridges or you could block them by turning one into a blocker, basically assigning them different jobs, and you have to try to get a certain percentage to the end of the level. Now I was already aware of Lemmings at this time, so I was already familiar with the rules, but that didn't stop this game from being hard. I remember this game being really hard at the time. I don't know if it was, but one of the things I remember was that the different difficulty settings were named after different types of snow effects or Christmassy things. I think the hardest difficulty was called Blizzard, and there were also these bouncing snowmen who were death traps. You had the snowmen acted as death traps, and there were death traps in the original Lemmings as well, but in this one it's a snowman. So it was kind of like just an extra level pack for Lemmings, I suppose. Number 285 is Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel. That is a strange name. This is a game that was made by Sunsoft and it was on the Mega Drive. It was also on the Super Nintendo, but I played it on the Mega Drive. It's a 2D platformer. You are a squirrel and you have these different flying capabilities and different combat capabilities. The controls are actually pretty strange because I think it was that B would allow you to jump and you could also press B in the air to do like an air spin attack jump thing. You could also press C to do like this weird attack jump forward, but it would also, if you press down and C in the air, you would do this air attack. And you could also press A to shoot the shurikens and maybe use the nunchuck, which is like a short range attack if you ducked and pressed A, maybe. Or maybe that was C that let you do that. I think it was A that let you do that. Or maybe you pressed B, I don't know. The controls are a bit confusing, but I liked this game. It was kind of like a wide open area type game. The first level was on this beach, and also as part of this game you had these secret areas where you had this blow up entrance, so you could jump on the blow up pump of this door, and then once you fully formed it you could go through the door into these secret areas, and if you pump them up too much they would explode and you wouldn't be able to go through them. What makes this game interesting really is the different types of controls that you have to interact with and the different ways of going about doing things. For example, in, I believe it was the second level, it's like this cave and you get to a point where it looks like you hit a dead end, but it's actually just really weird controls, and it feels really good when you actually get the hang of it. But I can kind of describe it as sort of like, if you imagine like a V-shape where you start at the top and you have to like fall down a hole and then you go right a bit and then you have to go straight up from there. It was kind of like that, apart from the way that it worked was that if you fell down, you could climb up these little steps to get back to the top. But you had to jump in the air, press C and down so that you could sort of get air collected as you're falling. And then when you hit the bottom, press right and then up, and from the speed that you've collected, you will start flying upwards. So you can't just, you know, jump and then start flying through the air. You actually do have to fall in order to get air resistance or something. I don't know the physics, I don't know how realistic or anything. It is quite weird, but you kind of understand it by playing it. You fall down to get speed, and then it's sort of like you can just change your trajectory by pressing right and up, so then you can fly up. I also remember there was the level on the speedboat, which I don't think I was as keen on. There was the paper factory, which may have been at the end of the game. There was also like a volcano and this area that was like in the trees, like high treetops. And those levels did have some really, really hard and awkward moments where you also had to like drop and do the weird flying motions and all that. But I did complete this game probably more than once, so it wasn't like a Sonic Spinball where I finally managed to do it once, but it did have some weird moments, had some interesting battles. For example, I remember in the cave level you had these guys in these machines that would swing a pickaxe back and forth up against a wall, and you had to do your down and C attack so that, or something like that, so that you could sort of fly directly into them and bounce off them. It's very hard to describe. It's one of those games where you kind of have to see it in order to understand what I'm talking about. Number 284, we have another Mega Drive game, and that is Columns. This game I had on one of those Mega Game Collection things, so it's like a 3-in-1 bundle cartridge, and it came on one of those. This is sort of like one of those puzzle action games where you've got things coming from the roof of the level, and you drop them down and you try to get colours to line up so that you can make them disappear and get as many points as you can. So the way that this particular puzzle action game worked was that you had blocks of 3 different gems, and there were always a vertical column of gems, and you could press the buttons to sort of toggle between the different variations, so it would sort of cycle around them, and you just place them down on the grid. And when you got 3 connected in a row of the same colour or the same type of gem, they would disappear, and then the rest would fall from on top of those, and you would get like big combos and stuff. You could sometimes get the blocks which were just 3 of a colour gem, and they would fall and just instantly disappear, but of course you could match them up with other things to make them disappear as well. You also had the sort of, how would you describe, sort of like these super gems, which are sort of like this white flashing coloured star things, and they would just destroy all of the colour of whatever you put next to it. So say you put it on top of an orange gem, it would just destroy all of the orange gems on the level, which can set off a big chain reaction. Generally, if you're destroying all of one particular colour, then what that means is that you're reducing the amount of different types of colours that there are on the board, so you are creating a higher chance of there being a combo, a chain reaction from that. And I also remember that this game had particularly minimalistic music, which I'm not sure if that's actually true, it's just how I remember it, I suppose. Number 283 is a game that, I know some people hated this, Worms 3D. Basically this is the 3D version of Worms, and I had the GameCube version of this, because this was probably shortly after I got a GameCube. I think I saw it in a shop and I just thought, yeah, Worms 3D, I'll have that because it's a 3D Worms game, and I like Worms games. So the way that Worms works, if you don't know, is that it's primarily a multiplayer style party game, although you can obviously play single player with computer opponents. But you have this small little team of 4 worms, and you can collect and use all these different weapons with all these different effects to them. So for example, you'll have like the shotgun, which is just a direct shot, but then you can also have the bazooka, and the bazooka will fly through the air and it will be affected by the wind, but it will cause a big explosion when it lands. Now, most Worms games are in 2D, which is why this particular one is called Worms 3D, because, you know, it was to stand out. And what's quite strange, I suppose, is that the environment is destructible. So, say in the original Worms, or any 2D Worms game, you would throw a grenade, and the grenade would blow up, and if it was next to some land, it would just form like an empty circle. But that doesn't mean in this Worms 3D that it would form an empty sphere. It just means that it would blow up certain blocks. It was as if the levels were compromised of these different sort of randomly assorted and randomly shaped blocks that were like scattered all around. Also, the way that Worms works is that you take turns between each of the players. It's not a constant ongoing thing. You have your turn, which means you control one worm, and that worm then goes and does a thing, and then once they've done that thing or the time has run out, then the next worm in line has their turn. And you'll cycle through all your worms in order, and it'll cycle through all the players in order, although usually there's an option that will allow you to change which worm you're controlling, so you can change the worm that you are primarily controlling every single turn. This game also came with some challenge modes, and I love challenge modes. I always love challenge modes and stuff, like single player campaigns as they would normally be called, I suppose. And also this had the theme song Shake Your Coconuts. I don't know the name of the band that play it, but the music also appeared on an episode of Malcolm in the Middle where Hal fantasizes about having some springy shoes, and he's running down the street bouncing on these springy shoes, so he wants to get Dewey to sell so many cookies or something like that. But yeah, that's the theme song of Worms 3D, and that is Worms 3D for you. Number 285 82 is Super Hang-On. Now, this is another Mega Drive game that I had where it came on a sort of 3-in-1 disc. I don't think it came on, not disc, what am I talking about, not disc, cartridge. I don't think it came on the same one as Columns did, although it may have, I'm not so sure. And Super Hang-On is a racing game, it's a motorbike game. And this is one I have many fond memories of. You have two different modes. There's one mode which is basically the arcade mode, where you select your level and you can choose between Africa, Europe, Asia and America. I think Africa is meant to be the easiest, and then it goes Asia, then America, then Europe is the hardest, or at least the longest. Also, you can choose the music for your level. So you have Outrider Crisis, Sprinter, winning, if I can say the word properly, Winning Run, which is my favourite. I love Winning Run. It's... Did I say Winging Run? Winning Run. I'm getting tongue-tied here. Winning Run, which is my favourite of the three, and then Hard Road. And there was also the original mode, and this was my favourite part of the game, because in original mode, you basically started from the bottom of the barrel, and you had to win against your rival 5 times. It was a best of 5, I believe. I may be slightly mistaken there, maybe best of something else, but I remember it being a best of 5. And if you win 5 of them before you lose 5 of them, then you will progress to the next race. If you do lose 5 before you win 5, you will go back to the previous race where you'll have to win 5 again. And each race that you have a sponsor, and so you'll gain so much money if you win, and you'll gain so much money if you lose. But if you lose, you gain a significantly smaller amount of money. Money is used to buy parts, upgrade parts of the bike, and you can also do it to upgrade your mechanic, so you have a better mechanic. I don't know exactly the ins and outs of how a better mechanic works, but you start the game and you look at the stuff, and you can see like mechanics that cost hundreds of thousands or millions even of dollars, and you think, how am I ever going to get that much? And obviously you get that much by getting to the later races and being able to getting to the higher ones where your sponsors give you more money. One thing I do specifically remember is that for some reason the sponsor that you have of the second race gives you less money if you lose than the previous one, which is strange because usually it's the higher sponsors just give you more money overall, but you get less of a reward for losing. I know it sounds strange that you get a reward for losing at all, because if you lose then that's just losing, but the idea is that it's meant to be grinding, and that it's like it's a punishment that you're getting less money than what you would have got if you win. And of course you use the mechanics to repair your bike if it crashes, but I discovered a trick with this game. I discovered that if you just start the game off, just crash your bike, just start the race, crash your bike as much as you can until it's just completely broken, then don't fix it, start the race, and what will happen is it will say like something like can't compete, bike broken, and then you will instantly lose. But because you instantly lost, you will instantly get your losing money, the money that you get for losing. And so it's really quick to just crash your bike and then just enter races, be instantly disqualified, and then get your taking part reward. It's very strange. Also, in terms of the actual races, in terms of like the mechanics of the actual races, you do have a turbo thing that you can hold down that will allow you to speed up, but of course if you use it around corners it's going to cause a lot more trouble. And all of the levels and all of the scenery is basically the same, just how it looks is different. So it might be all sandy, it might look like sand, it might just be like a yellow side of the road with all these different signposts and then this certain background, and then every 2 checkpoints it all changes. So it may change to grass and palm trees, or it might turn to pavement with lampposts and like a city in the background. But it's just dressing, it all functions the same. But yeah, that is going to be it for this episode. So thank you to everyone who is here listening and watching. I will see you all next time.